Dubro Suspicion Files.
You know, every November, our planet flies through this dusty trail left behind by a comet, and bam, our skies just light up with a Leonid meteor shower. We see them as these beautiful streaks of light, right? But what if they're more than that? What if they're actually delivering something incredible? So let's dive into a really wild idea. Could life on Earth have actually arrived on a shooting star?
I mean, that's a pretty bold question, but it's really at the heart of what we're talking about today. It's this theory called Panspermia, the idea that life is just out there all over the universe, and it gets spread around by things like meteoroids and comets. And if that's true, it means that the very first spark of life on our planet, well, it might not have been from our planet at all.
So we're going to treat this like a cosmic courtroom case. The accusation on the table that the Leonid meteor shower is actively seeding our planet with life. And to start, we're going to hear from the prosecution. Let's look at their evidence.
Now, the case for the prosecution really rests on three main pillars of evidence. We're going to lay them out one by one, starting right now.
So here's the game plan for their case. First, the argument that life is way more resilient than we think, tough enough to actually survive a trip through space. Second, they've got what they call a smoking gun, a supposed fossil found in a rock that came from Mars. And third, the final piece of the puzzle, what they claim is a total vindication from NASA itself.
Okay, so the first point is pretty simple. Life is unbelievably tough. I mean, we used to think of space as this totally sterile, deadly vacuum, but then you have critters like the tardigrade, the water bear, that can literally survive the raw vacuum and radiation of space. We've even found bacteria just chilling 25 miles up in our own atmosphere. This amazing resilience led to the theory of lithopanspermia, which is just a fancy way of saying microbes could hitch a ride inside rocks that get blasted from one planet to another.
And listen, this isn't just some theory. The whole idea of rocks traveling between planets, that's a proven fact. As of 2012, we had found 105 meteorites right here on Earth that we know for sure came from Mars. So the delivery system, the interplanetary Uber, if you will, it's real and it's running.
Okay, so we've got a vehicle. But did it ever have any passengers? Well, that brings us to the prosecution's star witness, a meteorite called Allen Hills 84001. This chunk of rock, found in Antarctica of all places, was presented to the world as the potential smoking gun.
So back in 1996, a team of scientists published this bombshell paper in the super prestigious journal Science. They claimed this meteorite from Mars had structures inside that looked exactly like tiny fossilized bacteria. The logic was powerful, and it was simple. If Mars had life once, and we know for a fact that its rocks land on Earth, then the seeding of our planet isn't just possible. It's probably what happened.
And this all leads to the final and maybe most direct piece of evidence. The claim that NASA, during these high-flying missions to study the Leonid meteor storms, found the ultimate proof that living things could actually survive that fiery plunge into our atmosphere. And this wasn't some subtle hint. Chandra Wickramasinghe, a huge proponent of this theory, came right out and said it. He looked at NASA's data and declared it clear proof that bacteria could survive the trip, vindicating the whole idea. Case closed, right?
Okay, let's just pause here for a second. It's an incredible story. You've got these super tough microbes, fossil evidence from another planet, and a stamp of approval from NASA. It connects us to the cosmos, makes us feel like we're part of this vast, ancient story. It's really, really tempting to believe it. And that feeling, that desire to accept a grand story, that's something we need to keep in mind as we continue.
And now, the defense gets to speak. It's time to put all this evidence under a much stronger microscope. Let's see if this case really holds up.
All right, before we go any further, this slide is absolutely critical. You have to understand this. The word panspermia gets thrown around to describe three very different ideas. As you can see, mainstream science, that's the green light, is totally cool with pseudopanspermia, the idea that the non-living ingredients for life, the building blocks, came from space. But the theory we've been talking about, lithopanspermia, in yellow, is a fringe idea. It's got some major problems.
So, armed with that crucial distinction, let's re-examine the evidence with some good old-fashioned hard science, starting with the claim that little critters can survive entering the atmosphere.
First things first, we gotta bust a myth that most of us learned in school. A shooting star doesn't glow because of friction with the air. Nope, the real reason is a way more violent process called ram pressure. So what does that actually mean? A Leonid meteoroid, which is usually just a tiny grain of sand, hits our atmosphere going over 160,000 miles per hour. The air in front of it literally can't get out of the way fast enough. It gets compressed so violently that it instantly heats up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. This creates a bubble of plasma that completely vaporizes the particle. It's called ablation. No bacteria, not even our super tough tardigrade, can survive being vaporized. It's just game over.
So let's move on to evidence number 2, that smoking gun fossil from Mars. For years, scientists went back and forth on this. But now, thanks to way better technology and analysis, that debate is over. The case of the Martian nanofossil, it's officially closed.
A really detailed analysis, published again in Science in 2022, gave the final verdict. Those little structures, they are not fossils of ancient life. They were created by purely chemical, totally non-living interactions between water and rock on ancient Mars. Now, what's really cool is that this is still a huge discovery. It proves Mars had the organic ingredients for life. This is a perfect example of how evidence for the mainstream theory, pseudo-panspermia, was twisted and presented as proof for the fringe one.
And now for the grand finale. That supposed NASA vindication. This is the most important part of the entire rebuttal. The claim was that NASA found clear proof of surviving bacteria. The reality, if you actually go and read the scientific paper, is the exact opposite of that claim. The paper concluded that some complex, non-living organic molecules might survive the entry. It found zero evidence of bacteria. In fact, it's strong evidence against life surviving, while at the same time supporting the idea that life's ingredients can.
So, the evidence has completely collapsed. The physics doesn't work, the fossil isn't a fossil, and the NASA data was totally misinterpreted. So why? Why do we want to believe stories like this so badly? Well, the answer seems to be in the wiring of our own brains.
The first reason is something called proportionality bias. Our brains kind of struggle to accept that a huge, monumental event, like the origin of all life on Earth, could have a tiny, quiet cause, like some chemical reaction in a muddy pond. A grand cause, like a fiery rain of life from the cosmos, just feels right. It feels more proportional.
And the second bias is patternicity. Our brains are pattern-finding machines. We are hardwired to connect the dots. So we take a weird-looking squiggle in a Mars rock, a meteor shower, and our own deep questions about where we came from, and our brain just weaves them together into this single, neat story. It's the same thing that makes us see faces in the clouds. It's a powerful instinct, but man, it can be misleading.
So, the verdict is in. The case that the Leonid meteor shower seeds Earth with actual living things is just not supported by the evidence. But you know what? Closing this one case only helps us focus on the real, much deeper mysteries.
And that brings us all the way back to the question we started with. When we look up at a meteor shower, are we witnessing the story of where we came from? Well, after all this, the answer isn't a simple yes or no.
The evidence is pretty clear. No, we are not watching living organisms rain down from space. But in a much deeper, more scientifically accurate way, we are watching our origins. We are watching the constant delivery of those complex, non-living organic molecules that are the fundamental building blocks of every single living thing on this planet. The raw materials for life itself, forged in stars and delivered by comets. And that connection to the cosmos, well, maybe that's even more profound.